Big Bang. It took a little bit less than 21 pounds of pure stuff to make the Big Bang, which created, among other things, the Milky Way galaxy. About 10 billion years after that, a planet formed around the yellow star we may call Sol. The planet was seeded with life by dust of comets drifting through the galaxy between star systems. In the last 4 million years, a life form evolved upon the planet, having 12 distinct thought actions to its mind. All of these thought actions have evolved up to the last one of them, where everything is stuck at that last level of thought action we may call will thought action, or perhaps what Nietzsche would call the will to power. Stuck at that last level of thought action we may call will thought action, or perhaps what Nietzsche would call the will to power. Our hero, Professor Noodle, fell out of a career in military medicine, having tried to conform. In the effort he took, assisted by the military to make him a real man, the failure did something else. As he nearly died, he saw the Big Bang, or imagined he saw it, and he imagined talking to other beings in time and space who have the 12 thought actions fully matured, and learned of the unidentified but otherwise very good entity which formed the universe from 21 pounds of pure substance, seeking to express good and perfect creation in life. So, Professor Noodle, assisted by his new ability, which accidentally formed experience, the power of pan-dimensional imagination, seeks to understand life and explore truth. These episodes are the continuing saga in the essay on existence by Professor Noodle
of the Professor Noodle Show. Greetings and welcome to another episode of the Professor Noodle Show. In this episode, we will be discussing the fact that the year 2012 has some unique characteristics in the area of, and it is a discussion of part of our existential perspective, a combination of events at the industrial scientific level and at the level of scientific discovery deliver us to a new set of perspective questions in what we might call ideas in historical perspective. What are the differences in ideas in historical perspective? In the mid-1800s, an explorer and archaeologist discovered tablets, clay tablets, in the area of legendary Babylon, what we would now call the area of in consciousness, work together as expressions of being, of living being, in a collective process titled generations, which
ideas and historical perspective, ideas and historical view on the issue of the progression of science and the scientifically informed perspective on our planet and the greater meanings, the bigger picture meanings of biological life, what makes sense today in quantum physics wouldn't have made sense in the middle of the 1800s, for example. Before the Grand Canyon in North America was discovered and explored, before being able to see the fossils in order, because seeing the fossils in order down the side of the Grand Canyon on before this, there was little solid evidence of evolution that proved much. Before the Hubble Space Telescope, which in a single picture provides us with 100,000 new stars and galaxies in those spots of light to explore and study in each picture. Before the Hubble Space Telescope, the full size of the universe was not as apparent as it is now. Before Voyager 1 and 2, in this time, within the next 3 months to the next several years, reached the interstellar space area, past the shield of the what they call the helium shield of our sun, getting beyond the bubble of the energy influence of our own sun and our own solar system, we would not know the issues that we're going to be exploring now as we get more information back, 1 and 2, about what interstellar space is like. So every day now we're learning new things about interstellar space. The Mars rover with a color camera. The color camera means...
So that is one of the key issues.
Now we will be able to more quickly detect where to look for things that we're looking for. Now we will speed up locating clues we've been trying to find. Now chemistry tests now are ready with that equipment to prove key issues about Mars. If life existed or is very slightly there, is it infective for Earth life? So if there are microorganisms on Mars, are they a disease microorganism with regard to life on Earth? If life is on Mars, which had life first, Earth or Mars? Next, if life began on Mars, then spread to Earth, what does that mean about our perspective of the nature of life in the universe? Microorganisms are very tiny. You cannot see them with the naked eye, generally speaking. So on Earth, what we do know is, on Earth there are many protists. The tiniest life forms are viruses, and next are the prokaryotes. Then there are the eukaryotes, which have membrane-bound nucleus structure. Monera, or bacteria, are the prokaryotes. Eukaryotes include the algae, protozoa, and the water and slime molds. Protozoa are more animal-like, generally, and unicellular. Fossils of protists in Western Australia, inside rocks of stromatolites, are found fossils of a prokaryote called primaviflum, dated back to 3.5 billion years in Earth's natural history. Earth formed in our solar system as a planet about 4.6 billion years ago. So these are some things about the quantum physics reality that we exist in this universe. And the questions that are before us now with the space probe, the Viking 1 and 2 space probe, which are approaching the edge of the solar system, that particular consideration that the Voyager 1 and 2 are reaching the interstellar space area, what the questions are that are before us with that is something unique to this year and to this period in the culture of planet Earth today.
Historical perspective. What are the differences in ideas in historical perspective? In the mid-1800s, an explorer and archaeologist discovered, evaluate the tablets, clay tablets, the information of ideas in historical perspective. One of the remarkable things about the place in history that we are right now is that we have finally, since the 1940s, with the beginning of the computer systems developed by the United States Navy and then the United States Army, and after that the advancing technology of digital information that was in some ways created out of the space race and the Cold War. But ultimately, in all of these events, the progress of our understanding of cyberspace has had an interesting matchup with the progress of our understanding of time and space. And so, no longer living in the scientific understanding from a Newtonian physics perspective, but instead from a quantum physics perspective, what we find ourselves discovering is that the mathematical model that we can now make with the cyberspace research begins to resemble various aspects of the functioning dynamic systems of metabolism and genetic coding and genetic inheritance, natural selection, almost suggesting that the mechanisms of biology are a program of a certain kind. And what the implication of this meaning is in other aspects of ancient literature, where certain numbers come up again and again that in terms of an idea in historical perspective we would never have interpreted in the mid-1800s the way that we would now look at those same strange patterns in today's world. For example, in computer programming, we know that there are three structured programming constructs: looping, sequence, and decision. And in the amino acid sequences that make up the organization of materials for the proteins of all living things, we have 23 amino acids, and more particularly somewhat unusual proline and lysine, leucine and proline, somewhat unusual in the sense that leucine and isoleucine are only different by the placement of one methyl group at the end of the molecule next to the R group. And for proline, proline is an extremely small molecule and is really extremely simple in design, having a nitrogen group in there and being basically a loop with the nitrogen group in it, so that it looks like 21 amino acids plus two modifications on that, 3 times 7 plus 2. Again, some of these number patterns which exist in natural biology are alluded to in ancient Sumerian and Babylonian texts, and it is, as an idea in historical perspective, extremely unusual to have such mathematical meanings alluded to in metaphor in ancient literature, where they would seem to be a kind of an anachronism of concept to have these allusions of meaning, where there were a people who knew nothing about DNA sequences or DNA tricodons that code for amino acid sequences that string together like a string of pearls and bundle up into shapes, distinct shapes, to make the protein structures necessary for the cells of living things. So there is a pattern in cultural language events that is somewhat peculiar, even anachronistic seeming, if we assume that it is merely coincidence. And that is why, as we move and continue to move into a multiverse that is a quantum physics reality, the implications of what we don't know are immensely more fascinating than the extremely bright light on a fairly small area of the known universe that we call hard science today. Certainly, the methods of science must continue to be cautious, unassuming, and objective. However, the interesting fact is that the discovery of new pioneering ranges of exploration, both in terms of just information analysis in cyberspace and in terms of the size of the universe around us and the phenomena which astrophysics instrumentation now reports to us, both of these things provide us with ample material for very fascinating speculation. Here is a example of how a three-sided color-coded and position effect combination language that would work for both a written readable language with an alphabet and also as a way to code amino acid sequences. This is how this language would look. Here is an example of how a three-sided triangle, color-coded and position effect coded language that would both be a an alphabet for humanly readable letters, as well as a amino acid sequence coding, DNA tricodon identifying code. It would work for both. Developmental experiences, and this is what that language would look like. In the area of legendary Babylon, what we would now call the area of